Acts of Motivation by Alexa Burruss and Whitney Williamson. Please join us as we look at motivation theories, the concrete, observable behaviors of our own kiddos through the lens of these theories, and how to apply these theories to our lives as parents and educators. There are three acts of motivation theories that researchers have agreed upon. We have expectancy value theory, causal attribution theory, and goal orientation theory. In this project, we are going to look at two of these three theories, the expectancy value and goal orientation theories. Expectancy value theory is a psychological framework that explains why people choose to do certain tasks and how much effort they put into them. In simple terms, it states that a person's motivation is driven by two questions. Can I do this? And why should I care? Then we have the goal orientation theory. This theory is a framework that explains why people approach their learning and tasks. It looks at the underlying goals that drive their behavior, focusing on whether they want to master a skill or prove their ability to others. Have you ever wondered why some people keep trying even when something is hard, while others give up quickly? Well, motivation is not just about setting goals. It's about believing you can succeed and understanding why the goal matters. We're going to share what we learned about expectancy value theory and goal orientation theory and how we applied both with our kiddos this summer.
When I chose to apply expectancy value theory, I focused on helping my daughter become more motivated to read. Before this activity, reading was often frustrating for her because she lacked confidence whenever she came across difficult words. She would sometimes become discouraged and want to stop reading altogether. After learning about expectancy value theory, I realized that simply encouraging her to read more wasn't enough. I needed to help her believe she could be successful while also helping her see why reading was valuable. One of the biggest ideas I learned from this theory is that motivation depends on two important factors, expectancy and value. Although they work together, they mean two different things. Expectancy refers to a person's belief that they are capable of succeeding. In other words, it's answering the question, can I do this? The second part of this theory is value, which answers the question, why should I do this? So not only was she looking at reading better or reading altogether more, or why she should do this. For my daughter, expectancy meant helping her build confidence as a reader because she didn't always want to read, and she would sometimes get frustrated if she didn't know a word or wanted to quit and go draw or something she liked to do better than reading. To do that, we read books together instead of expecting her to read everything independently. We broke books into smaller sections so the tasks didn't feel overwhelming, and I praised her effort whenever she worked through a difficult word or finished a section of the book. Over time, these small successes helped her believe that she really could become a stronger reader. As her confidence grew, so did her willingness to keep trying when reading became challenging. Once my daughter began believing she could be successful, I also wanted her to see reading as something meaningful and enjoyable. I let her choose books that matched her interests, and we used funny voices and expressions while reading together to make the experience more fun. We also talked about how reading would help her in school and allow her to enjoy stories independently as she got older. Finally, I tried to reduce the cost of reading by only asking her to read a few pages on nights when I could tell she felt tired or overwhelmed, making the task feel much more manageable. Looking back, I realized that expectancy and value worked hand in hand throughout this experience. Building her confidence helped her believe she could succeed, while making reading enjoyable and meaningful gave her a reason to keep practicing. If she had confidence but didn't enjoy reading or see its importance, she probably wouldn't have stayed motivated. Likewise, if she understood why reading mattered but didn't believe she could do it, she may have become discouraged or given up. Overall, this experience taught me that motivation is much more than simply asking someone to complete a task. It's about helping them believe they are capable of success and helping them understand why the task is worth the effort. As both a parent and a teacher, this is something I will continue to focus on whenever I'm helping someone learn a new skill.
The next real-life example we're going to look at through the lens of the expectancy value theory follows my little boy making his own lunch during the summer. Listen, during the summer, mom and dad can get easily caught up working on something, or we might just not be available. Well, if my 9-year-old son does not eat by noon, he becomes hangry. I needed him to want to make his own semi-healthy lunch so that he wasn't dependent on me all summer. Here's the motivation issue I was facing. How do I get my son to prepare a simple, healthy meal for himself for lunch? When we look at expectancy, unfortunately, my son did not have much confidence in himself to begin with. When we look at value, why should he do it? Well, it was easy to convince him that the automaticity he would gain would be worth it. So let's dig in. I started off by asking my son what he might like to have for lunch, other than ramen every day. He said that he might consider eating a turkey sandwich like Dad. This translates to mean a turkey and cheese sandwich with mustard that has been heated up using our electric panini press. However, he quickly followed that with, but that's just too hard. The expectancy value theory states that a person's motivation to achieve something is determined by the two main questions we've already looked at. Can I do this? And why do I want to do this? Well, with this specific task, making his own hot sandwich, my son's expectancy was pretty low, but his value or motivation is high. He's already told me that he thinks making his desired meal is too hard, meaning he doesn't think he can accomplish the task. However, he does want to eat lunch. My job was to structure this task using the expectancy value theory to change his mindset. I did this by mainly focusing on the cost value. The cost value is what you have to give up, suffer through, or invest to do a task. According to the theory, cost is the negative alignment of a task, the effort, time, or anxiety it requires. To a 9-year-old, a multi-step cooking task feels like a high cost of his free time and his energy. It also feels overwhelming as it involves a tool he's unfamiliar with. So I utilized decomposition, meaning that I broke this big cooking process into 4 smaller steps. We knew we had to gather all the materials, assemble the ingredients, use the panini press, and then successfully get the sandwich off the press. This scaffolding really reduced his perceived effort cost, making him feel like he could be successful right from the beginning. I also knew that I would need to increase the utility value of this activity for my son. This means I simply had to connect the skill directly to a goal that he does highly value: autonomy. I explained that mastering the hot sandwich meant he would no longer have to wait for mom or dad to prepare his lunch during summer. By making the utility of this task immediate and personal, he became more interested. The expectancy value theory also states that an individual's expectancy for success is heavily dictated by their current self-concept of ability. My son expressed some anxiety regarding this task, so his expectancy was a little low. I knew we were going to have to step in and boost his confidence. I did this by drawing a parallel to something he's already really good at and enjoys. Well, 2 things actually. We talked about Legos and baseball. He already has a high self-conception of his ability in these 2 areas. By reframing the cooking task as a structural blueprint or a step-by-step algorithm that he's already capable of following, I successfully raised his expectancy for success. We talked about how he's already able to follow complex steps for Lego instructions. He's also been working really hard on his swing for baseball over the last few months. He realized that what those 2 things had that this task did not was explicit instructions. When he does Legos, he has a Lego guidebook, and he puts them together just the way it says. When he was working on his baseball swing, we jumped on YouTube and watched more baseball videos than I can count. So we put together a plan. Because my son was able to verbalize why he was so comfortable and confident with baseballs and Legos, we did the same thing for our hot sandwich. We looked at videos on YouTube about how to work our panini press. Guys, you can find anything on YouTube. Could I have shown him how to work the panini press? Of course, but he's way less interested in mom showing him when he could be watching a video on YouTube. And this is what he said he enjoyed about working on his baseball swing. And then we wrote down step-by-step instructions, like in the Lego booklet, for what he needed to do to make his sandwich. We listed the 4 separate steps, and I even drew cute pictures to help him remember, which definitely earned me an eye roll. I teach 6 and 7-year-olds, what can I say? After we did these things, my son was able to make his own hot sandwich with absolutely no problems at all. With this theory, there are 4 types of value that we need to hit on really quickly. We have intrinsic value, and this is doing the task for its own sake or because you find it satisfying. With the little girl and her reading became more fun. With the little boy and his sandwich, the automaticity that he acquired motivated him to want to make his own sandwich. Then we have attainment value. This is the drive to do a task because doing well on it confirms your personal identity. Well, it's kind of the same thing in both of these scenarios. The little girl felt really proud to finish her books, and the little boy felt really proud to be able to make his own sandwich. Then we have utility value. This is the drive to do a task because it is useful or practical for achieving a future goal. Well, this one's pretty straightforward. Reading obviously is great in and of itself, but it's going to help you in your future in so many countless ways. And making your own lunch means that you don't have to depend on others, and in the future, you can be more self-sufficient. Then we have the cost value. This is what you have to give up or suffer through or invest in order to do a task. Well, in the case of the little girl and her reading, we reduced frustration by reading fewer pages when necessary. With the little boy and his sandwich, we reduced frustration by doing some research and making a checklist. The highest return on investment wasn't rewards. It was building confidence and enjoyment. As those things increased, willingness to persevere increased as well. Okay, next up we have goal orientation theory. And it's a major psychological framework that explains why and how people are motivated. While general motivation theories focus a lot on how much motivation a person has, the goal orientation theory focuses on the orientation of that motivation, meaning the specific goals, reasons, and mindsets that drive a person to achieve something. In short, it doesn't just look at whether a person wants to learn, but what kind of success they are chasing. This theory breaks goals into 2 primary orientations: mastery approach goals and performance goals. Let's look at these really quickly. People with mastery goals are focused on learning, improvement, and mastering a skill for its own sake. They measure success against themselves. The mastery approach is the ideal learning mindset. This is when a person genuinely wants to understand the material or problem. If they see mistakes, they see them as part of the learning process. Next up, we have performance goals. This is focused on social comparison. People with performance orientation goals are focused on how they look relative to others. They measure success against their peers. The performance approach says that a person wants to look smart, get the highest grade in the class, or win first place at the science fair. They're driven by outperforming others and receiving public praise. They may also give up when a task becomes too challenging. Now, let's look at 2 real-life examples of the goal orientation theory in practice.
For my second motivation activity, I applied goal and goal orientation theory while teaching my daughter how to do her own laundry. At first, it seemed like a simple goal. She wanted to learn how to wash her clothes independently. However, after learning about this theory, I realized there was much more to motivation than simply helping her accomplish the task. Goal and goal orientation theory emphasizes that it's important to understand not only what someone wants to achieve, but also why they want to achieve it. That distinction became the foundation of how I approached this activity. In my daughter's case, her goal was to learn how to do laundry by herself. I know, crazy. But before we began practicing, I asked my daughter why she wanted to learn how to do laundry. Her answer was simple but meaningful. She told me she wanted to help our family and become more independent. Once I understood her motivation, it changed the way I supported her. Instead of focusing only on teaching her the steps as quickly as possible, because we're all busy, I focused on helping her develop the skills and confidence she needed to achieve something that was personally important to her. As I worked with my daughter, I intentionally tried to encourage a mastery approach orientation. A mastery approach goal orientation focuses on learning, improving, and developing new skills over time. Someone with this type of orientation views mistakes as part of the learning process and is motivated by personal growth. This was definitely her. Rather than expecting her to master every step immediately, we broke the process into smaller, manageable parts. We started by learning how to sort clothes by color, then practiced measuring the detergent, selecting the correct washer settings, and transferring clothes to the dryer, and finally folding and putting them away. Focusing on one step at a time allowed her to experience success through the process instead of feeling overwhelmed by trying to remember everything all at once. I also made sure to celebrate her effort, persistence, and improvement rather than expecting perfection, which can be hard sometimes. If she forgot a step or made a mistake, we simply talked through what happened and practiced it again. This approach helped reinforce that the goal wasn't just to finish the laundry correctly, it was to continue learning and improving each time she practiced. The results of the laundry goal. The goal wasn't just to get the laundry done, the goal was building independence and confidence. That creates a much better long-term payoff. Overall, this activity reinforced that motivation is not just about helping someone achieve a goal. It is about creating an environment where learning is valued, effort is recognized, and progress is celebrated. As both a parent and a teacher, I believe goal and goal orientation theory provides a powerful framework for helping others develop the confidence and resilience they need to accomplish meaningful goals, not just by reaching the finish line, but by embracing the learning journey along the way.
All right, our next real life example follows my daughter and her room renovation this summer. She is 10 years old and she has a very unique room setup right now. It's important that you understand this in order to understand her goals and what the project was. So, her bed that she sleeps in right now is kind of like a day bed, and underneath it, there are three huge drawers. These drawers have always held her clothes. It's essentially been her closet. It has held, shirts in one drawer, pants in another drawer, undies, socks, and PJs in the third drawer. Well, she does also have a massive closet in her bedroom, but her closet over the years has accumulated all of her toys. Well, her goal was that she wanted to change the way her clothes were displayed in her room. The older she gets, the bigger her clothes get, the more room they take up, and she's just cramming in them in the drawers of her bed. And this is starting to drive her crazy. Well, I wanted this to fit our theory of goal orientation. So instead of just saying, sure, let's switch your room up, I asked her to focus on why this task mattered to her. Why did she want this to happen? And her answer was that she wanted to see all of her clothes laid out neatly on the shelves rather than being crammed in the drawers. Essentially, she wanted easier access to all of her clothes so that she could make decisions about what to wear more easily. Makes total sense. So the goal orientation theory breaks goals into two primary orientations, like we've already talked about, the mastery goals and the performance goals. Researchers later also split these two things, the mastery and performance, into approach and avoidance categories. We're going to take a look really quickly about the mastery approach and mastery avoidance, and then discuss how my daughter's summer project cleanout fits into one of these categories. People with mastery goals are focused on learning, improving, and mastering a skill for its own sake. They measure the success against themselves. The mastery approach is the ideal learning mindset because this is when a person genuinely wants to learn or understand something for themselves. They see mistakes as part of the learning process. And trust me, we had a few hiccups along the way. Then there's mastery avoidance. This is when a person is worried about not mastering material or, accomplishing their goal. However, my daughter was focused on developing competence for herself. She took ownership of the project, and therefore her success or her failure was entirely her own. Now back to the closet. I suggested that she take the clothing that was in her drawers under her bed and move it all to the shelves that was in her closet. Then she could take the toys that was in her closet and she could move them to the drawers. We did have to, again, use decomposition and break the project into small, manageable pieces because it was pretty overwhelming. I celebrated her effort along the way and had to encourage her mid-project and remind her about the why of her goals. I had to have her look back at what was truly important. Sure, she wanted the closet to be swapped out. She wanted to see things more easily, but why? The ultimate reason was that she wanted daily life to be easier for herself, and that was her true motivator. She was able to clean out those drawers and clean out that closet and make the swap with little help from me. I was so proud of her. It was so interesting to watch how that orientation of that goal was so deeply embedded in her and how that made all the difference for this project. The goal wasn't just get the clothing and toys switched. The goal was building independence and confidence. This created a much better long-term payoff. Once she accomplished the small goal of making her space more functional, she was really able to accomplish a long-term goal, which was every day is easier because I accomplished this task. Our big takeaway about the goal orientation theory is that goal setting and goal orientation are not the same thing. And I feel like our two real life examples really showed this. We have the what versus the why. Sure, anybody can set a goal, but when you continually focus on why that goal is being set and what you are actually achieving beyond just the goal, that really drives you to complete the goal you've set for yourself. Again, we have the goal setting versus the goal orientation. Goal setting says, what do I want to accomplish? One little girl wanted to get some laundry done. Another little girl wanted to change up the way her room was organized. But when we really dig into it and we look at the goal orientation, why did they want to accomplish these tasks? It really gives us a deeper meaning. The little girl wanted to help her family. She wanted to have her own laundry done. And then the other child wanted to be able to function more freely and efficiently within her space. So by accomplishing one small goal, they were really setting themselves up for success in the future. One thing we think goal orientation theory really lends itself to is the growth mindset. This is the idea that we are emphasizing effort. Effort matters. Persistence matters. Mistakes are just a part of learning. This is the power of the word yet. Right? Failure is an opportunity to grow. I can learn to do anything I want. Challenges help me grow. My effort and attitude determine my abilities. Feedback is constructive. I like to try new things. People that have this type of mindset really thrive when it comes to the goal orientation theory. They have the mastery performance mindset, and they are going to be successful in reaching their goals. So let's make some connections. What should we do to try these theories in real life? Well, with the expectancy value theory, our main takeaways are that we need to work on building confidence in others. As educators, this obviously means within our students. We need to make the task that we are asking them to do meaningful and enjoyable. Easier said than done. But when a child can feel confident in the task that they are about to take on, then they are going to be more likely to be successful. Whether this looks like scaffolding something, breaking things down into smaller pieces, and really providing that support, we have to do what is necessary in order to really boost their confidence. And then we also need to focus on learning and growth rather than just performance. When we tell kiddos that their performance is what matters, that's when they start seeking the acceptance of their peers and their teachers. And that's not really what we need to be focusing on. We want the process to be more of a big deal than the actual product getting produced. This means that they will be more engaged and that they are more likely to develop persistence and that they will have more meaningful long-term growth. So I hope you're able to take these examples that we have from our kiddos over the summer and apply them to what your kiddos are going to do in upcoming school years. Remember, build confidence, make the task meaningful, make it as enjoyable as possible, and focus on the learning and growth. These are keys to success. We've shared a lot of important information during this presentation, but the main thing we want you to understand is this. The biggest lesson learned is that motivation is not simply about telling someone to work harder. It's about helping them believe they can succeed, helping them see why the task matters, and supporting them through the learning process. As both parents and teachers, we've realized that understanding why someone is motivated may be one of the most powerful tools we have for helping them succeed. Thank you so much for your time. We hope this project was enlightening and that you enjoyed learning about acts of motivation.